The dark mystery of Cabin 28, Keddie's unsolved murder. Have you ever heard of a crime so brutal and mysterious that, even after decades, it still remains unsolved? Imagine an idyllic vacation setting that suddenly becomes the scene of a terrifying massacre. This is the case of Cabin 28, a crime that shocked the small town of Keddie, California, and which to this day gives rise to countless theories and questions. What really happened that night? Who were the perpetrators? And why has this case never been completely solved? Stay until the end to discover the shocking details of this true story. Paradise turned into a nightmare. In the early 1980s, Keddie was a haven for many families seeking peace and quiet in the wilderness. Glenna Sue Sharp, recently separated, moved to Cabin 28 with her 5 children, looking for a fresh start. But what seemed like a new chapter of hope soon turned into a living nightmare. On April 11, 1981, the small community of Keddie, California, was rocked by a brutal crime that remains unsolved to this day. Glenna Sue Sharp, 36, her son John, 15, and his friend Dana Wingate, 17, were found dead in Cabin 28, where the family had been living for about 5 months. Sue's daughter, Tina, 12, disappeared that night, and her remains were only discovered 3 years later, approximately 50 miles from Keddie. The crime scene was terrifying. The bodies of Sue, John, and Dana were found in the living room, bound with duct tape and electrical cords. Sue was found near the couch, partially nude, with signs of beatings and stab wounds to the chest. John and Dana also had serious injuries, including deep cuts and blunt force trauma to the head. Interestingly, Sue's younger sons, Rick and Greg, along with their friend Justin Smart, were unharmed in an adjacent room and apparently did not witness the attack. The initial investigation was marked by failures and negligence. Sheriff Doug Thomas, who was in charge of the case at the time, said the crime was frustrating due to the lack of concrete evidence. Several suspects were questioned, including Martin Smart, Justin's stepfather, who lived nearby. Martin claimed that a hammer was missing from his home, a tool that could have been used in the crime. In addition, his wife Marilyn found a bloody jacket that allegedly belonged to Tina in their basement, but there is no official record of this discovery. Years later, new evidence came to light. In 2016, a hammer matching the description of the missing person was found in a nearby lake, reigniting the investigation. Plumas County Special Investigator Mike Gamberg said the location of the hammer indicated it was placed there intentionally. Additionally, in 2018, DNA evidence recovered from duct tape at the crime scene was linked to a still living suspect, although his identity has not been released. The Keddie murders continue to intrigue and disturb the local community and investigators around the world. The brutality of the crime, coupled with the flaws in the initial investigation, have resulted in decades of speculation and unconfirmed theories. While new evidence continues to emerge, hope for justice for the Sharp family remains alive, but the mystery lingers, haunting the once quiet community of Keddie. The night of the crime. On the night of April 11, 1981, something terrible happened inside Cabin 28. The next morning, Sheila Sharp, one of Glenna's daughters, returned home and made a horrifying discovery. The bodies of her mother, her brother, John, and their friend Dana Wingate had been brutally murdered. They had been tied up, beaten repeatedly, and stabbed. What shocked the authorities most was the fact that 3 children who were inside the house had survived without even being touched. And an even more macabre detail, Tina, 12, had simply disappeared. The discovery of the bodies on the morning of April 12, 1981, Sheila Sharp returned to Cabin 28 after spending the night at a friend's house. Upon entering, he came across a terrifying scene. The bodies of his mother, Sue Sharp, 36, his brother John, 15, and his friend, Dana Wingate, 17, were in the living room. They had all been tied up with duct tape and electrical cables, showing signs of beatings and multiple stab wounds. The mystery of Tina's disappearance as the bodies were being discovered. Tina Sharp, 12, was noticed missing. Initially, it was believed that she might have run away or been kidnapped. The search began immediately, but no concrete clues to her whereabouts were found in the following days. The crime scene and the initial investigations. The crime scene showed clear signs of extreme violence. The walls were stained with blood, furniture was broken, and objects were scattered. Local authorities began their investigations, but faced difficulties due to the lack of conclusive evidence and the complexity of the case. Suspects and initial clues. During the initial investigation, several suspects emerged. Martin Smart, stepfather of Justin, one of the children who survived unharmed in the cabin, reported that a hammer was missing from his home, a tool that could have been used in the crime. In addition, his wife, Marilyn, found a bloody jacket that allegedly belonged to Tina in their basement, but there is no official record of this discovery. Discovery of Tina's remains. 3 years after the murders in 1984, a human skull was found in the Feather Falls area, about 50 miles from Keddie. Forensic tests confirmed that the remains belonged to Tina Sharp, ending hopes of finding her alive and adding another dark chapter to this already disturbing case. Initial investigation failures. The initial investigation was marked by several failures and negligence. Crucial evidence was lost or poorly cataloged, and the crime scene was not properly cordoned off, allowing potential leads to become contaminated. These failures significantly compromised the possibility of solving the case at the time. Case reopened and new evidence. Decades after the crimes, the case was reopened in the hope that new forensic technologies could provide answers. In 2016, a hammer matching the description of the missing person was found in a nearby lake, reigniting the investigation. Plumas County Special Investigator Mike Gamberg said the location of the hammer indicated it had been placed there intentionally. Additionally, in 2018, DNA traces recovered from duct tape at the crime scene were linked to a suspect who is still alive, although his identity has not been released. Impact on the Keddie community. The murders deeply affected the small community of Keddie. The resort, once a peaceful retreat, lost visitors and eventually closed, becoming a ghost town. Cabin 28, the scene of the crimes, was demolished in 2004, but the psychological and emotional impact persists among residents and victims' families. Theories and speculations. Over the years, several theories have emerged about the possible motives and perpetrators of the murders. Some point to personal revenge, while others suggest involvement in illegal activities or even ritualistic crimes. However, none of these theories have been proven, and the case remains unsolved. The legacy of the Keddie murders. The Keddie murders continue to intrigue and disturb the local community and investigators around the world. The brutality of the crime, coupled with the flaws in the initial investigation, have resulted in decades of speculation and unconfirmed theories. While new evidence continues to emerge, hope for justice for the Sharp family remains alive, but the mystery lingers, haunting the memory of the once peaceful community of Keddie. The Keddie murders remain one of the most intriguing and disturbing cases in American criminal history. The search for justice and answers continues, while the victims' memories are preserved by family members in the community. This case serves as a reminder of the importance of meticulous investigations and the need for continued advancements in forensic techniques to solve complex crimes. The investigation and the mysterious clues. The crime scene at Cabin 28 was a true horror scene. The level of violence shocked even the most experienced investigators. Sheriff Doug Thomas, who was in charge of the case at the time, described the scene as one of the most brutal acts I have ever seen in my career. But despite the brutality, something was intriguing. There were no signs of forced entry. Whoever committed the murders had entered the house without difficulty, which suggested that the victims knew the killer. The police found several pieces of evidence: a bloody knife, a hammer, and a gun butt. However, many details about the investigation have been questioned over the years. Forensics revealed that the duct tape used to tie the victims was military grade, raising the possibility that the killer had training in this area. The disappearance of Tina Sharp. While the bodies of Sue, John, and Dana were found in the living room of the house, Tina Sharp, just 12 years old, had disappeared without a trace. This led the police to believe that the crime could have been premeditated with the aim of kidnapping her. This hypothesis gained even more strength when, years later, in 1984, An anonymous caller called the police station to report that Tina's remains were in a remote area, almost 100 kilometers from the cabin. The forensic pathologist who examined the remains, Dr. Richard Wilson, stated, "The condition of the bones indicates that Tina may have suffered extreme violence before her death. What is disturbing is that, to this day, we have not been able to determine exactly what happened to her after her disappearance." The prime suspect, Martin Smart. From the beginning of the investigation, the name of Martin Smart appeared as one of the prime suspects. He was a neighbor of the Sharp family and the father of Justin, one of the boys who was in the house on the night of the crime. Smart had a history of aggressive behavior and, according to reports, did not like Sue Sharp. His wife, Marilyn Smart, stated years later that she believed Martin and his friend Beau Baubed were involved in the crime. Martin had also reportedly told a therapist that he had committed the murders, mentioning his hatred for Sue. However, this confession was never followed up by authorities. When questioned about it, Sheriff Thomas stated, "There was no concrete evidence to link Smart to the crime, only suspicions and rumors. Errors and conspiracies in the investigation. The case was marked by errors and failures by the police. Many believe that there was an intentional cover-up, possibly involving corrupt or negligent officers. Documents went missing, important evidence was lost, and some key witnesses were never properly interviewed." One of the main criticisms came from private investigator Mike Gamberg, who took over the case years later and stated, "There is something very wrong with this investigation." There were so many mistakes that it is hard to believe that they were just coincidences. One example of this is the hammer that Martin Smart allegedly discarded shortly after the crime. This hammer was found decades later in 2016 in a creek near the cabin. Had it been recovered at the time, it could have been a crucial piece of evidence. Theories and possible motivations. There are several theories about the motive for the crime. Some suggest that Sue Sharp knew something compromising about Martin Smart and Beau Baubed, and that her death was planned to silence her. Other theories suggest that the crime may have been a random attack by psychopaths, or even something related to secret cults. Criminologist John Douglas, one of the pioneers in the creation of criminal profiling for the FBI, analyzed the case and stated, "The crime at Cabin 28 has the characteristics of a planned attack, but with elements of emotional uncontrollability. The use of different weapons and the brutality indicate that there was a deep resentment against Sue Sharp." Conclusion. A case. Still open decades later, the Keddie massacre remains one of the most disturbing criminal mysteries in American history. Despite new investigations and advances in forensic technology, the killer, or killers, have never been officially identified. What happened that night in April 1981 remains a mystery. If there is one thing this case has taught us, it is that justice does not always prevail. But as long as there are people determined to seek the truth, like the investigators still working on the case, there is hope that one day the mystery of Cabin 28 will finally be solved. Unsolved mysteries and theories. Several hypotheses have emerged over the years. Could it have been a crime of passion? Was it involved in drug trafficking? Or was it a premeditated attack by someone very close to the family? The use of hypnosis. To gather information from one of the witnesses raises even more doubts about the reliability of the clues. Even with new forensic technologies and the reopening of the case decades later, justice has never found the true perpetrators. Many believe that evidence was covered up, while others suspect that the killers may still be alive and unpunished. Know that the case remains alive. The crime of Cabin 28 continues to be one of the most enigmatic in the United States. What happened that night remains a mystery. Will we ever have definitive answers? What do you think of this case? Share your opinion in the comments. And before you leave, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss more incredible stories like this. And there's another video on the screen for you to watch right now. See you next time.